And let's talk to Ian Acheson, former prison governor, Home Office senior civil servant. As I said before, Ian, a very good morning to you. There's plenty of crime out there, but there's not much punishment. So if you have that sort of conversation, let's start with the crime first. The shoplifters and burglars now supposedly facing mandatory prison service, prison sentences. I find it amazing that the police come out and say they're going to do their jobs, and it's actually a news story.
Yes, I mean, one of the problems that we've had in the past is the lack of detection of shoplifting. But I think it's actually worse than that.
Yeah.
It's that shoplifting has effectively become decriminalised. And what's the impact of that? Well, the impact, as ever, is felt most acutely in some of our poorest, most deprived communities, where you see, for example, the Co-op this week saying they're going to shut up shop and showing very distressing footage of shop workers begging for police help, and there isn't any because shoplifting has fallen off the agenda. Shoplifting is really important, actually, because a lot of the people committing those offences, I think about 75% of them will be addicted to drugs in some form or other. But there is a problem here with saying, well, we can build prisons and build our way out of this, because at the moment we've got a prison system that is almost full to capacity. And if you send people who've committed low-level offences into our prisons at the moment, some of the most disordered prisons where every metric of violence and despair is off the scale, you're actually going to weaponize that offending behavior, and you're simply going to turn out people who are more adept offenders at the end of a prison sentence, a short prison sentence, that's making no difference.
Is there any truth to the theory anyway, that if you send somebody to prison who is a sort of not maybe a first-time offender but a relatively new offender, can they be frightened enough in prison to never want to go back?
I think that does hold true for some offenders. Certainly, you've got a lot of people who their experience of custody is so brutalising that they never want to go back. So you can, to some extent, scare people straight. But I think, particularly if we're talking about, we've got about, of our 86,000 people in prison, about 10,000 of them, according to the latest estimates, are in for drug-related offences.
Right.
Now, a lot of them are in prison and should be in prison for a very long time, for example, being concerned in the supply of Class A drugs. But a significant number of them are prolific offenders who are feeding an addiction. And you're not going to scare people like that straight by going into prison. Prison is actually a place where about 8% of people who go into prison for the first time report that they've become addicted to a substance while inside the prison.
Well, there's no shortage of... I mean, I remember when I was living in Scotland, in Saughton prison, just on the outskirts of Edinburgh, had a real problem where people were literally throwing drugs over the fence, whether they were inside pigeons or inside various, different animals or whatever it was. But the drugs availability in prison was better than it was in sort of parts of Edinburgh. And there are plenty of drugs in Edinburgh,
So the point is, you're not going to scare those people straight, to use the phrase, who are chemically addicted to substances like heroin and so on. What you need is a different form of disposal for those people. But what you need actually before that is the certainty of detection and the certainty of consequence and sanction. At the minute, that is missing. And what happens then is you get zones of criminal impunity created that torture decent people who are trying to bring up families in these communities that are blighted by crimes that go undetected, and for whom there is no sanction until, it's the 5th or 6th or 7th or more time in front of the magistrate, who gets frustrated by the lack of any impact of any community-based penalty. We could talk about that, and sends this person to prison. But unfortunately, those people are now being sent into a teeming, violent, brutalising environment where many of the the pathologies, if you like, that have driven them into crime are only going to be magnified. And that's a massive societal problem. It's massively expensive. It ruins that person's life, and that person then goes on to victimize others. We've got, we're banging up more people than most countries in Europe per head of the population, yet we have one of the worst reconviction rates in Europe. Something is going wrong. What I would say, Mike, as part of the solution, is to look at people who are convicted of non-violent acquisitive crime related to a drug addiction, and then have a completely different disposal for those people. I don't mean, incidentally, a community disposal. I mean some kind of compulsory secure treatment and rehabilitation that is outside the criminal justice system and is perhaps led by, for example, the NHS.
Yeah.
I think if you did that, you would then create the space to be able to deal effectively with the people that we really should care about. And those are the really scary people who commit...
Right. Because,
interpersonal violence.
Well, because let's not forget, there's two sort of opposite sides of the triangle here. I think to try and get to the point of the triangle, if you know what I mean, where you've got the need to safeguard the public from bad people who shouldn't be allowed to roam free to do them harm, and then also the need not to make those bad people worse in order to get to the point where they can be released back into society and they've been fixed. So it seems to me what you're saying is spend more money not on building more prisons, but on putting the right people in the prisons and maybe creating another place for other people to be treated. And I kind of accept that, but I wouldn't give it to the NHS because they've got enough problems. They can't even run the NHS.
Can I just come back to it? It's some and some. We actually do need to build our way out of the prisons crisis that we have. The government initially talked about an ambition to create, I think, 20,000 what they called modern prison places. Yeah. That ambition was to build new prisons to be able to shut down some of these teeming Victorian dungeons that are engine rooms of further offending and places that it is impossible to do any rehabilitation with, where it's very unsafe for staff. So I think that ambition is good, to have decent places for people to be sentenced to and for people to work in, and safe places. I mean, we haven't talked about staff safety as a kind of driver of all of this.
Which should be a given, shouldn't it?
Well, you would think that, but just a few days ago, the most horrendous statistics on staff safety were on prison safety generally were released. 26% increase in self-inflicted deaths, 52% increase in self-harm in female establishments, 11% increase in assaults, 32% increase in sexual assaults, and serious staff assaults, which means broken bones, hospitalisation, scalds, stabs, happening at a rate of about 2 a day. You cannot help fix broken people with broken staff, and that is a scandal that needs to be addressed either by this government or whatever government replaces it, because without those people, those men and women who pull on a uniform to go into these places every day feeling safe and confident to be able to do their job that society asks of them, all of this stuff is for the birds. Doesn't matter how many people are sent to prisons for shoplifting or for anything else. If those places are fundamentally unsafe places to work in, you're not going to have any of the benefit for all of that investment.
Yes. Well, I mean, the other problem as well that we need to talk about is if the government are going to issue instructions to allow small time, what they call, first time offences like shoplifting, like theft, like drug possession, to be resulting in only a caution. Where's the disincentive for people who do those kinds of things to stop doing them? Because I don't think there is one.
Well, clearly there isn't, because you see those people returning again and again into the criminal justice system. So what we need to talk about is not necessarily filling prisons with these people, but to say there will be consequence here. There is an absence of consequence. I've said before, that creates zones of impunity in working class areas in particular, like places that I grew up in, where criminality becomes worse because there is no sense of authority, and incivility becomes worse. The morale of the community starts to slide. It starts to become a place where people don't want to bring up families. I mean, one of the most amazing things I remember seeing on TV was when Rory Stewart, when he was doing his pitch for Mayor of London, I think, he went on a walkabout and he was talking to some people in a community, and you could see the gleaming towers of the city and Docklands in the background, and he was asking this couple were they intending to have children, and they said, we would like to, but we're going to have to wait until the area that we live in is safe, because it's not safe to bring up children at the moment. And that's in the 6th richest economy in the world, in the shadow of all of that wealth. That we have people talking like that is absolutely intolerable. But of course, those people don't live in places that middle-class criminologists live in, who have got the ear of government, it seems to be, when we're talking endlessly about decarceration. You know, what our problem is here in this country, you know, when people talk about ending short sentences, is not that short sentences are bad per se. You know, there are lots and lots of prison systems and jurisdictions in Europe that do short sentences that are even shorter than ours. Our problem is that we do them so badly.
Yeah.
And so we do them badly because the system is absolutely stuffed with people who shouldn't be in it. And that means that there is no hope of actually effectively rehabilitating all the people that really do need our attention. And that's why I go back to the point of saying, yes, we need certainty and consequence and sanction for people who commit low-level crimes. It's really important. It was demonstrated in New York in the 80s and 90s when it was cleaned up that if you focus on low-level quality of life issues, and you target those criminals, you stop them turning into worse criminals, and you stop the degradation of these communities that, let's face it, none of us, you know, that talk and opine in these programs live in anymore.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I live in London, and you never know from one day to the next whether the street that you live in is going to be witnessing somebody being murdered in it, or somebody being robbed in it, or somebody being stabbed in it. You know, I would say that almost all of London now is a very dangerous place to live.
Well, perhaps, but I'm talking particularly about areas of very low socioeconomic growth and ambition and opportunity. Those areas always suffer first at the hands of, progressive criminology. And what we need actually is to, and I've talked about this before, we need a kind of expeditionary style assault on these communities to support them and to rescue them, where we're building police stations, not closing them down, but putting police stations in those areas, restoring a sense of order and authority, and going after the types of people that are destroying those communities. And of course, going after those people to offer them help. I'm very much in favour of being able to give people a choice. You know, people who are addicted to drugs who are committing repeat offences certainly say, and have the resources, that's important, to be able to say, we want to help you. We want to help you get out of this cycle because it's destroying your life and you're wrecking other people's lives and livelihoods as well in the process. But if you refuse to do so, then we're going to make life impossible for you. And back in the noughties, when I was at the Home Office as Director of Community Safety in South West England, there was a strategy that was created called Prolific and Priority Offenders to do just that. It was resourced. I don't even know if it exists anymore, and probably nobody in government does either. But it was resourced to be able to grip the very people that we're talking about and to say, you're going to be offered a choice. But, you know, the choice is either you submit yourself to treatment and rehabilitation, or we make life impossible for you.
Yeah.
And we need a lot more of that. That's not soft justice at all.
No, that's intelligent justice, which sounds to me like is what we need rather than just a knee-jerk reaction. Listen, great to talk to you, Ian. Thanks very much. We could do it all day as well. Ian Acheson there on soft justice, on crime, on punishment. There isn't any, and it's going wrong. And what do we do to fix it? I want your views on that.